I just bought a Heritage Audio HA81a. Let's talk about it. So I like to research pieces of gear before I buy them. And this joint right here on paper was looking like the second coming of hell yeah. So you know I was shocked when I found next to nothing online in the way of a review and less than nothing as it pertains to hip hop. I went ahead and bought it anyway though. So we're gonna unbox this joint and give it a real review from my point of view, so you ain't gotta jump in blind like I did. Matter of fact, let's just skip the stupid part. So yeah, that boy been in the rack a few days, got some bars through it. I think I'm ready to get my thoughts.
I plugged the mic in, flipped a couple switches and started rhyming. It wasn't right then, but I kept writing, knowing I had to put the time in to earn my stipend. Do your guy a solid one time, subscribe and like this.
So Heritage Audio has been on my radar since I first started planning this studio build. They had a particular monitor controller that at that time, feature-wise, really seemed to blow everything else out of the water, and I was given to understand that the sound quality matched the versatility. It's actually one of the reasons why I ended up going with the interface that I went with, because some of the features, as far as the monitor control facilities are concerned, were similar. Ultimately, I did end up going with a kind of an all-in-one solution as far as my interface versus going converters, monitor control, preamps all separately and modular, but I could have just as easily gone with the latter, and Heritage Audio was a big consideration. Later on, after I had really kind of gotten a really good start in on the studio build, Heritage Audio came up yet again. When it came time to decide whether I was going to do the majority of my mixing in the box or purchase a few choice hardware pieces to kind of augment that, create somewhat of a hybrid setup, if you will. They had a couple of summing mixers that seemed, again, particularly appealing given their feature set when compared to the field. And so I was always kind of hearing good things about Heritage Audio and the gear that they have to offer. And feature-wise, I mean, they always, on paper, they look second to none within a certain price range. That is. I mean, if money were no object, we'd all have, you know, what we'd all have. I finally picked up a piece in the HA81a, and again, feature set. The ability to combine the Neve 1073 style preamp with the 1081 style EQ for a real unicorn of a channel strip. Best of both worlds, if you will, I found particularly appealing. I got into the 1073 sound about a year ago. You know, like I said, I like to research gear a lot. I'm really into like studio tour videos and gear reviews and all that kind of thing. And I pay a lot of attention to a lot of the really legendary engineers of classic rock. I mean, it's just something about it. Maybe it's because I'm from Cleveland. Who knows? But I like classic rock, and so and those guys seem to be very vocal about techniques they use. There's a lot of reviews from a lot of those guys. They're really open about sharing their experience, and so I've paid a lot of attention to what those guys have said, and after hearing 1073, 1073, 1073 for years and years and years from the rock guys, finally I opened up a 1073 plug-in inside my DAW. I did what they said. I drove the input until it was just starting to break up, and it backed off the output to compensate. Ran a verse through it, and you know what? It sounded good. It sounded real good. Now, that wasn't the only trick that I employed rather, from the rock guys. Not only did I use their 10-73 trick, I used that in conjunction with the 1176 to LA2A compression in sequence trick. So 1073, 1176, LA2A, right? And man, I wasn't sure if the things that a lot of the rock guys were saying was going to apply to hip hop as well. But man, oh man, I'm glad I was listening to those guys. And so I have been using that sequence of plugins for a while, just going in straight into the preamps in my audio interface, and then 1073 plugin, overdriven, 1176, LA2A, and then limiter to make that really just nice. It's a vocal sound that is at the same time creamy and lovely and warm, but tight and together simultaneously. And it really, really, really does work. I guess that's why they pay those guys the big bucks, right? And so over time, I just kind of got used to having that. It was a preset after a few weeks of trying it out for the first time. And so I got used to implementing that. And much as I don't want to get into the hardware versus software beef, I was tempted, especially after I bought myself a fancy microphone. And so I said, well, I want to build myself a golden channel. So first thing I purchased with after getting that microphone was a dual compressor that has an 1176 style going into an LA2A style in the same 2U rack unit, or vice versa. You can switch the order. I bought that. I did not right away go out and pick up a 1073 style preamp, because the preamps in my interface are just pristine, and I had bought a really characterful microphone. And so I was, in my mind, I was kind of looking to preserve that. And so I ended up getting a channel strip that had some really nice processing features, the DBX 286S, but relatively just, a preamp that kind of doesn't get in the way of anything. And I was enjoying that. Perhaps at some point I'll, do a review on that, but I was still wanting for something, you know what I mean? And the idea of throwing the 1073 plug-in after all that other stuff just didn't really, maybe it was just all in my head, but, and so I jumped in. Like I said, Heritage Audio was already kind of on my radar, and when I saw that piece, I wanted that surgical EQ. I wanted to be able to, you know what I'm saying? And the fact that it has high and low pass filters, so I could use those to kind of adjust how close or how far away my voice sounds, or as part of how I adjust how in your face or, backed off my vocal is on a given track. That really appealed to me, as opposed to just getting a regular 1073 EQ. style of preamp. And so I went to researching this piece. And that's where I kind of ran into a brick wall. Seemed like, people were buying it, sold out a few places, but nobody was really talking about it. People were talking about the HA73, their 1073 EQ style. And I was seeing mixed reviews, and I had ended up having to jump into Gear Space after, striking out on YouTube and Sound on Sound and everywhere else looking for some quality reviews on this piece. And I found maybe a couple of mentions of it, really just promo stuff from when it was released. But the feature set was so compelling, went ahead and copped it anyway. And so it's here. You know what? Sounds good. It sounds real good. It sounds how it's supposed to sound. 1073 preamp, 1081 EQ, 1176 HA81a limiter. I wasn't new to the sound, and so I knew what to expect, and I got just that. One caveat. The knobs Heritage Audio, as good a sound as I can get out of that piece, as pretty as it is. Why y'all put them cheap ass knobs on that beautiful piece of gear? The knobs suck. All of them. Other than that though, wonderful. Wonderful. I'm able to carve out what I need to carve out. I was a little confused at first. Didn't come with any instructions of any sort, and figuring out how to kind of dial in the EQ parameters, especially with them whack ass knobs, was a little difficult at first. So it took me about an hour to get everything dialed in. I'm going HA81a to DB line into DBX 286S with the Black Lion B17 2A inserted. And on the DBX, I'm not using the compressor, I'm not using the enhancer, I'm just using the expander and the de-esser, and the fact that it's got input and output, so I can kind of more, adjust my gains going through the chain with that much more precise detail. You know what I mean? The filters, I'm able to dial them in for exactly what I need. I'm able to drive the preamp gain hard, back off the input, and much to my surprise, at least with my setup and how I've got everything staged, I'm not using a ton of gain at the preamp stage. I think I'm at 50 dB, somewhere around there going in, and that's giving me just that touch of that saturation I was looking for. And it's sounding good. So all in all, it's a good piece for the money. What is it? $1,200. I would like better quality knobs on the thing, or pots, whatever you want to call them. But for the sound I'm getting, and being that I'm not going to be switching things around on it a whole lot, and I use my gear with care anyway, I'm not mad at the purchase. Would I buy it again? I mean, yeah, unless somebody else puts out the same piece with a better build quality, yeah, I mean, for $1,200, I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it because it sounds so good. For there to be just one thing that I'm not really feeling, I could live with that. You know what I'm saying? And it looks like I could get in there and kind of shore up the build if I really had to anyway. You know what I'm saying? I got some tools. I'm pretty good with my hands. I can figure some things out. But for now, it's doing what I needed to do, and it's sounding like I needed to sound. And that's my take on the Heritage Audio HA81a from a hip hop perspective. One.
I plugged the mic in, flipped a couple switches and started rhyming. It wasn't right then, but I kept writing, knowing I had to put the time in to earn my stipend. Do your guy a solid one time, subscribe and like this.